had a great presentation I prepared last week, and then last night I decided to switch it to an OnlyFans. I was like, this is all about OnlyFans and side hustles, so hope you enjoy it. Thank you for having me. Yes, so I am half of Friends on Fire, which I'll talk about for like 30 seconds because it is relevant. That's my other half of Friends on Fire, which is Mike, who I host the podcast with. And we, it's relevant to this discussion. We started this podcast because we just accepted that, or realized, I guess, how taboo of a topic talking about finances was. And so we bonded at work, we met at work. He was my business finance partner, and I would ask him lots of questions about like my taxes, which I thought you're supposed to do with your finance partner at work, and he would answer them. And then my personal taxes, to be clear, and we would just like bond. I realized his parents were early retirees in their 40s, and we just realized we had a lot in common, and we would like nerd out about personal finance topics. Instead of doing our jobs at work. And so we decided, we should do something together, and we decided to do a podcast. So this is, that's Mike and his family right there. That's me and my family right there. And the only reason there's a picture of a car in there is one of our most popular episodes is me wanting to buy a new car and Mike trying to talk me out of it for the whole episode. It, for some reason, became like a favorite amongst our listeners. So. But this is more to show, we are on the, on the outside and the inside, just a regular, two regular families, and we enjoy talking about money, and we have gained a lot by talking about money. We have improved because we have these open conversations. We've created deeper relationships with each other and with many other people as a result of just having these more meaningful discussions. So switching from talking about Mike and I in the podcast, this is a little bit about just me and my husband, Greg, who is right there. And we've been able to, and I'm by the way, I'm not sharing this to brag about anything. I'm sharing this to build up a point I'm about to make. So we have accomplished a massive amount of our financial goals, and in a pretty short period of time, because I did not know about FIRE until about 5 years ago. I was always super frugal and didn't really know what I was saving for. Other than I had a little bit of bag lady syndrome. Do people know what bag lady syndrome is? It's a real thing. There's a book called The Bag Lady Papers that's about a magazine editor who lost all her money in the Bernie Madoff scheme. I guess scheme is the right word for it. And but it's all about this. The idea of bag lady syndrome is no matter how well you do or how hard you work, something could happen one day where you'll just lose it all, right? And I always sort of had some mentality like that, and so I was a saver and I was frugal and I had to work pretty hard for what I had when I was younger, and so I just had this mentality of like saving and living below my means somewhat naturally. And so anyways, we were able to accomplish this stuff. I paid off my mortgage as a divorced single mom. I then got remarried. We live 100% debt free. We both have had very successful corporate careers for the last 20 years. I shifted to some part-time work about a year and a half ago where I moved from 100% to 80%. And we were able to reach our financial independence goals. So we had a rough goal, and we were able to hit it before we were 40. I'm 41 now. My husband is 43. And we recently put in our notice at work. We put in the notice 6 or 7 months ago, and we are about 30 days from, not that I'm counting, but about 30 days from being fun employed, as I learned the term from you. And so our last day is May 6th in what is the end of, for each of us, 20-year careers for my husband in this exact same company for 20 years. And for me, I've been at my most recent company for 15 years. So it's like a relationship that you're leaving in a way. It's a big move. And so we've accomplished all of this, but I have a secret, and it's not about OnlyFans. That might be my new secret after what I've learned about, but no, I have a secret. I'm super scared. I'm gonna not say that word because I don't know where this is playing, but I'm really, really scared of a lot of things. Like I'm scared of quitting my job. I'm scared of, I already talked about bag lady syndrome. I have these questions of like, what if I get sick? What if my kids get sick? What if we run out of money? What if I regret quitting my job? What if 3 months in, I'm like, what did I do? I walked away from this company that's so good to me, that pays me a ridiculous amount of money to do something that I'm actually pretty good at and that I enjoy doing. And what are other people going to think of me when I leave? Or just all these things, what will we have enough money? What if the stock market crashes? It's on its way. What if Putin invades Ukraine? What if we end up in a world war? Like all these things that I'm afraid of and that I think about and that just like percolate in my mind every day. And I'm sorry to my husband who has to hear them every day because he hears them. And so I was like, we should start a Friends on Fear because it's more like all the things I'm afraid of, which I should just talk about. And so I'm afraid of all these things, and I have been for a long time, and I think I'm a thinker. I analyze things, I think 5 steps ahead, and as a result of that, I'm a pretty optimistic person in a lot of ways, but I think about like what the worst case scenario is, and I overthink it, and I analyze it, and I make a spreadsheet about it, which we'll talk about. So for me, I've been spending a lot of time on this journey of, when we put our notice in. For me, it was like 9 months ago. And so I've had a lot of time, like I knew this was permanently coming. And I've had a lot of time to think about it. And even before I put my notice in, for a couple years, like I knew this was coming someday in the, coming years. I didn't know how soon. And I would think about it a lot, to the point where my husband at one point was like, let's just pick a date and not keep, like kind of going back and forth on like, oh, I'm going to work another couple years. Nope, I'm going to quit tomorrow. And it really would go back and forth very frequently. So for me, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about this. And I tend to start with like, what is fear, right? Like, I know I'm afraid of a bunch of things, but let me break down like what fear is on my journey to getting past some of these fears. And so I do what I do on a lot of things, like what I should do when I look up cam girls later. I feel like you're not going to be able to use this video, by the way. But so I looked up fear, and this is the Merriam-Webster or Google, who knows, definition of fear. So an unpleasant, often strong emotion caused by the anticipation or awareness of danger. So to me, again, it like helps me to know like what is fear. So yes, I've got this sometimes unpleasant feeling because I'm thinking about something bad that could happen in the future. And then like thinking about fear in some other ways too, I think about sort of like the good and bad side of fear. So the bad side of fear is, it can be infectious. It's what terrorists use to terrorists incite fear in people. Like that is their MO, that is their approach, that is, what they're doing. It can create wars, right? We literally go to war over people having fears about, losing control over something or many different aspects. And if we give in to our fears, like we would never leave the house. We were talking about this at the campfire last night, right? Just the odds of, the odds of getting in a car crash are greater than a plane crash, yet we, fear planes more for some reason. And just, if we gave in to all of our fears, we really would never ever leave. And ultimately, fears stop us from fulfilling our potential. If we were to give in to all of our fears, again, we wouldn't do anything. It's also bad for our health. It can cause cardiovascular disease. You can get ulcers from, stress and fear and anxiety. But on the flip side, there's some really good things about fear, right? So fear reminds us that we're alive and can feel things. It's the reason that there's people who, want to jump out of planes repeatedly. I've jumped out of a plane once. It was great, and I don't need to do it again. But it reminds you, it can give you a sense of like adrenaline and an amazing feeling to kind of push past it. It allows us to feel feelings that are important, right? So hope, relief, gratitude, when we're afraid of something and we get over it and we get to the other side of it. It also stops us from doing stupid things, right? It stops us from being completely reckless and doing really dangerous things that we know, are not good for us. And it can bond us to other people. So if you've ever been through what is, an experience that is scary and you're with other people. You make some comparisons to fire and, retiring, quitting your jobs and living differently than a lot of people in society do live. It can really bond you to other people. So I like to dissect something that I'm kind of fear itself that I'm afraid of and think about it, and it helps me. So I think thinking about kind of the good and bad side of it helps me to start to break it down and think through just how I deal with my own fears. And then it's funny, I heard my husband actually make a reference to the spirit of this quote to one of our kids a couple months ago. And we have kids that are 10 to 13. They mostly don't listen to us. They think they're smarter than us. I'm pretty sure I was the same way when I was a kid, so I try to keep it in perspective. But it's hard to get through to them. It's hard to give them wisdom and advice and have them hear it and sink in. And so my daughter was afraid of trying out for the school play. She was going to, and she was fine, but as it got closer, she was like, I'm scared to do it. And I was, talking to her about it. I wasn't going to force her to do it, but I really wanted her to do it. And everything's been shut down for years, so I'm like, we're finally, doing this stuff again. You should totally do it. And she's not really listening. Nothing I say was really landing with her. And then I hear Greg say something to her, and I'm kind of in the room in the periphery. Or I don't know if I heard it or she told it to me later. It doesn't matter. But he said some version of this quote, right? Is that you're gonna be afraid. The idea of courage is that you're able to get past your fears, right? It's not that it's not the absence of fear. It's the triumph over it, as Nelson Mandela said. And so my daughter is like, oh, I'm going to try out for the play now. And I was like, well, what changed? And she was like, oh, Greg told me about. And I was like, oh, so you do listen to, And I was so impressed that it worked and that she heard it and she realized, just having that realization of fear's normal. We all have it. It's not, you're never going to not have it. Or some people perhaps might, but I'm never going to not have it. It's the idea of having the courage to get over my fears, right? And so that to me is it's such a simple thought, but it's really powerful to me to think, okay, this is normal. I'm going to have these feelings. I'm going to feel my feelings, but I'm going to get past them. And so I want to talk a little bit about how to help get past your fears, right? And some of these things I've done myself. Some of these things are based in research. I'm officially going to rename the podcast Friends on Fear for now. But I think, so a couple things, 8 things. The first one I think is just be kind to yourself, right? So accept that this is normal. And again, I say normal. Some people may be super fearless and just don't, have these feelings and overthink things and everything else. But I think a big thing is, for me, has been this is normal. What society is sort of built a certain way. And if I think of us, kind of all ants marching in an army, and we're told to live life a certain way, and we are told to consume a certain way, and when you go off the beaten path, which I think a lot of people on this journey and in this room are doing in different ways, it's normal to have some fears and some anxiety and think well, I see everyone else doing it this way. Is this way gonna work? And so to me, the first thing is just be kind to yourself, right? Don't be so hard on yourself for having these fears or for having, anxiety over the approach. I think the other thing is just listening and learning, right? The more you educate yourself, the more you realize how you can do things and what's possible. And the nice thing about the world we live in today is there's a massive amount of, books, podcasts, YouTube videos. They're all available for free. And they're filled with a really amazing and inspiring content that I think can help us push past a lot of our fears and anxiety on different topics, on probably any topic you can think of out there. So another important thing is to know your numbers. So you can get, if there's any fear or anxiety around the concept of early retirement or even just your personal finances and trying to improve them, you can't improve them if you don't know where you're at, right? So I think knowing your expenses, not even necessarily tracking your expenses long term, but knowing on average what it costs you and or your family or your partner or whoever to live for a year is a really important number to know. Knowing your net worth, critically important number to know. So knowing your numbers is important. And then when I was joking about spreadsheets earlier, I literally have a spreadsheet of everything I'm afraid of happening. with a number next to it. At one point, I calculated all my fears. I was like, okay, if all these crazy things happen, if it turns out our parents need a bunch of financial support that we're not expecting they're going to need because we think they're okay, what's that going to cost me, right? If it turns out, I also have fears like, what if I really need a Tesla? Like, that's on I have like different levels of fears, like things I'm afraid of happening. And then things where I'm like, well, I'm really gonna, like, I always thought it'd be cool to have a Tesla, and like, I believe in electric vehicles. And so all sorts of things that I have on that spreadsheet of, I decide, college is way more expensive than we realize, or we decide we're gonna fund it in a different way than we plan. Whatever it is, like, I've listed them all out, kind of my worst case scenarios, and I put numbers against them to say, okay, like, if all this stuff happened, which is probably not gonna all happen, what would this cost me, and what would this look like, and how would this change my trajectory? And so when I do my calculations and sort of projections for early retirement, I've got all that stuff calculated. And there's something about like writing them down and putting numbers against them that made me feel better, that I know what they are, they're there. And they're now like numbers on a spreadsheet, not things swirling around in my head. The other thing is, like, remember you're resilient. So we talked about this a little bit last night of, just that, I have to remind myself we're leaving our jobs, but this isn't the end of our ability to make money if we had to. So if any of these fears happen, I can't afford all those fears, by the way. If they all happen, I don't have enough money. And like the stock market crash, right? All these things that some of them are happening right now. It'll go back up though. But I do just like to remind myself, and anyone should remind themselves, like, we're all resilient, right? We can handle something that happens that's unexpected, and there's varying levels of what could happen. There's little bumps in the road that could happen, there's big bumps in the road that could happen, and there are things that we can get past. And I even remind myself, and my husband and I talk about it all the time, like, I'll go work at Starbucks if I need to. If benefits go crazy, like, I'm not above doing anything. I'll have a lot of options. I could go back to what I'm doing now. I could do part-time consulting. I could go work at Starbucks. I could drive for Uber. I could do a million things to make money, and I'm resourceful and willing to. And if anything was ever like that tough that I just needed to go do anything to make money, I'd be willing to do it. The other thing is, I've never been like a big journaler. Anyone in here like to journal? Good. I'm the journaler that's like every few years I start it somewhere and then not sure like where I left it, and then like 5 years later I'll find like 2 pages written in something. So I've never stuck with journaling. Perhaps in early retirement I will. But I know there's a lot of research around just the value of putting it on paper, and similar to the idea of kind of calculating them. It's a similar thought, but write them down. Imagine what the worst thing is that could happen. Rank them, prioritize, think about, what you're really worried about and what you want to prepare for versus not. And then, the other thing is there's a massive amount of research around the power of breath work and meditation. And I'm less skilled in the breathing thing, other than I breathe, just like all of you do, or all of us are right now. But there's a lot of like, more active breath work that can help a lot with anxiety and fear and other things. But I do meditate, and I go through phases of being kind of on and off the wagon in my meditation practice. And when I'm on it, I feel a lot better, and I'm afraid of less things, and I have less anxiety, and I'm nicer to my kids and all of these other things. And I am nicer to my husband and my kids. And they're free things that anyone can do, and there's so many resources now available for both of those things. And then the other thing I'd put in that category is just any sort of spiritual practice, I think fits in that same category of whatever you believe in. Spending more time kind of thinking about that and rooted in that can help a lot when you are trying to kind of face your fears and face different types of anxiety. And then, this is one I want to end on purpose, is your community, right? The benefits of having a like-minded community are incredibly powerful. So I think about some of the people that we've interviewed on our podcast as an example, which is one of the things I love about the podcast is when we interview people, I get to have these, more in-depth discussions with people. And I get to the point for like years where when we're done recording, towards the end, we'll start talking about how like I should quit my job, and like I've got people like giving me I mean, I think for 2 years I've had people being like, you should just do it. What are you waiting for? Like, I was kind of in the one more year syndrome for a while. And so I think finding a community of like-minded people is just incredibly powerful. And one of the things that is, what's so great about events like Campfi and Economy and other events, because it can help you on your journey. And like I said, this is a unique path if you just, take the averages of the world out there, and finding other people on that path, I think, can really help to alleviate your fears. And I've met many of you who have already quit their jobs, either short-term or long-term, and hearing you on the other side of it and happy and sharing different kind of thoughts and advice and everything else is incredibly powerful to someone who is not yet there and is, about to take the plunge. And so I think that community aspect is incredibly important. So I don't know if you noticed the small adjustment there, but we're back to Friends on Fire because I'm using a lot of these things to get past my fears, and I am now afraid of something else, which is not making this change. And it's something actually that I gleaned from my husband also, where when we were having one of many conversations where I talk about these things a lot, he even made the reference to, just being more afraid of not changing. Like, I think about how I'm going to feel 5 years from now, having made this change in our life, and especially, the next 5 years being more present and engaged and available for our kids. And I think about if I continued a very high-stress, demanding job for another 5 years, what my life would look like. And I'm now more scared for what my life would look like on the path of 5 more years. Again, great company, great job, very thankful, but very demanding, always on, just, exhausting in many ways. And I am now more afraid of not changing. So it's fun to sort of shift your fears on the other side to continue to fuel you in a positive direction. And then another quote I like of just, not letting your fear of the unknown rob you of pleasure of anticipating all the good things that could come. Because there's so much, when I think about kind of where we're at in our journey, there's so much that I don't know what things are going to look like. I don't know exactly how my medical insurance is going to work. I don't know if we're going to continue to be as healthy as we have been. I don't know what's going to happen with my kids. I don't know if they're going to need more support than they do now, and we, realize we don't have enough money, whatever it is. But like, I'm really trying to stay rooted in like not letting my fear of all those things that could happen stop me from enjoying all the good things that hopefully are ahead on this journey. So that is it. Thank you. I hope it's all rainbows in the future and nothing to be afraid of.